Hey everybody, it's your friendly neighborhood personal trainer, who else but Tommy else. And this is the debut episode of Tommy else Personal Trainer. I decided I wanted to do a podcast that is about health and wellness, but isn't just about do this, don't do that, you know, giving instruction and tips and things like that. I will get into those things. There will be episodes that are laser focused on specific things. But one of the things I wanted this podcast to be about was what it's like on my end as a personal trainer. I started as a personal trainer in October of 2005. So I'm coming up on 20 years now. Originally, I was not interested in being a personal trainer because of the structure in which personal trainers have to work within corporate gyms. And I'm going to get into that actually in our next episode. So because of that, it was something that I never really aspired towards. I myself, my background was that when I was a kid growing up, both of my parents were very conscious of their health and their physical appearance for sure. And but they both went to the gym, and I was the kid in the nursery, sitting there playing while the grown-ups got to go out and play it on what I thought was the playground for adults. Like I remember being in the playground room, and there was like this half door, and I would go and I'd peer over the little bottom half of that half door and look into the gym area. And to me, seeing the machines and seeing the people working out on them, to me, that looked like the adult playground. You got to go and do that stuff, and kids weren't allowed to do it. And so it became, I don't know, maybe a forbidden thing for me or something like that, but I wanted to go and do that. Um, so, you know, fast forward until I'm about, 15 or so. Along the way, my parents actually did get into competitive bodybuilding. My father first, and then my mother followed very quickly after him. And they, when they would be training and dieting for a competition, uh, being the children in the house, my brother and I would be eating the same foods as they were. And so we would then sort of by osmosis start learning what constituted healthy eating, what garnered weight loss and muscle retention and things like that. And there's things that, like, to this day, it's like I know these things. I don't know how I know them. I don't know. I just know, and a lot of it's because I just grew up with it. And so when I got to be about 15, I think you have to be technically 16, or at least at the time, to get a gym membership. But when I got to be 15, my parents both worked out at a gym in Downers Grove called Jaegers off of Finley Road in Butterfield. And uh, I, for my birthday, got a membership there because my father hooked me up and got me a weight belt and some weight gloves, and away I went. And while I had friends who were in either band, theater, or sports, my after school activity was going to the gym. I had my younger brother is about 6.5 years younger than me, so at 15, he's around 9, 10. And so I kind of had to be around after school for him until my mother would come home, and then I would go to the gym and spend a couple hours there. And one of my father's close friends, a man by the name of Larry Weiss, was a competitive bodybuilder himself, a Vietnam vet, a man of God, and he was somebody who took an interest in me and decided to be my mentor, so to speak, and my personal trainer. And he was the one who taught me everything that I know. So when we would work out, he was very insistent on learning proper form. And so anytime we started a new exercise, it was like you started with 5 pound dumbbells, which might just seem completely, or ridiculously light. But until I could show him that I could do that job with proper form with those weights, I was not allowed to move up to the tens and the 15s and the 20s and so on and so forth. And to me, I looked down that row of dumbbells and couldn't imagine at the time using the weights that were at the end of that rack. Um, but because of his guidance and because of him extending himself at no charge, mind you, I mean, he did all of this just because he knew he had somebody who was passionate about it, who really cared about it, who loved doing it and loved learning. And as somebody who has become obviously a teacher and mentor in not only uh, being a personal trainer, but for people involved in bodybuilding and professional wrestling now, uh, I can tell you that I understand that feeling of when you have a student who is just thirsty for knowledge, and when you know that they really appreciate everything, you will give them everything that you have and teach them everything that you know, because you know that your time and effort is not wasted and you're going to help this person. And it is one of the most gratifying things in the entire world, which is why I do what I do. And I have to believe that that was a big part of why Larry extended himself to me. Unfortunately, as of this broadcast, Larry passed away about almost 20 years ago now, unfortunately, to cancer. Uh, Larry used to be very insistent from a just because he believed in me, but he really wanted me to do bodybuilding and like compete. So, like I said, my parents were both competitive bodybuilders, but growing up around that atmosphere, I had been to so many shows, and it's such a long day. I mean, it's like you drive from, the Chicago suburbs to, say, Rockford, Illinois, and have to be there at like 5:30 a.m., which means you've left the house at like 3 a.m. You're there until nearly midnight, and then you have the drive to come back home. So it's just a very long day. And this is, mind you, pre smartphones, tablets, internet. I mean, we're talking like 1988, 89. I used to bring a couple books. I would bring a notepad. And what I learned and what I did do was is I bring that notepad, and a bodybuilding competition is in two parts in a given day. There is the prejudging in the middle of the day, which really is when the competition truly takes place. The competitors, based on their weight class, are lined up on stage in front of a group of judges, usually about 5 or 6, and they are judged on specific poses that they're asked to hold and perform. And then the night show, which is about 6, 7 hours after that, is the one that most people's friends and family come out to see you at. And then they award the trophies for the placings. And I saw, what I used to do is I'd sit in the crowd with my notepad and I would judge the people based on what I knew the judges were looking for at the time, and they got more refined as time went on. But one thing I noticed over time was is that the judges, they a lot of them own their own gyms. And so if there was, a couple guys up on stage who happened to be members at their gym, I started noticing some favoritism there. And those guys were winning the trophies because those trophies then go back to their gym, get put on display, and where it goes from there. So it ruined it for me in a lot of ways because I thought, well, there's so many variables in bodybuilding that there's no true way to have any standard for what wins and what doesn't. Uh, Not only do you have to worry about what the judges themselves are uh, going to favor, and it's not all of them, but but there were some who, if they're going to favor the people who are members of their gyms. Plus, there's also the economics of it. If somebody has more money to spend on supplements and cleaner food and things like that, that's something that maybe somebody else doesn't have the advantage of. And anything I ever competed in was a natural show. I'm almost certain that my parents competed in exclusively natural shows. Natural shows being the quote unquote drug tested shows. It's not like they're drug testing every single person in the show. What they do is, and it's just a cost thing, they will look around the locker room the morning of the show, and if they suspect that anybody looks or has any of the telltale signs of somebody who's doing steroids or growth hormones, they'll pull them aside and have them do a polygraph test, a lie detector test. And they will ask them, questions and everything and stuff. And if for some reason they fail that, then they're disqualified from the show. It's not the best way to go about it, but because you do get people who do roids and then try to get in on a natural show. And again, these are the reasons why like I didn't want to get into bodybuilding. People were just like, you do the working out, you train like a bodybuilder. Why wouldn't you compete? But for me, it was just a matter of like, well, what's the point? It's just so up in the air. I don't know. And eventually, I had some friends who uh, were pushing me towards doing a show, and I kind of decided at that point that the one thing I did have was the curiosity to know whether or not I could do it. Could I go through the 16 weeks of diet and training that it was going to take for me to get ready for a bodybuilding competition? Could I go up on stage in front of, say, 300 people and nothing but your skivvies and do a 1 minute posing routine, learn how to do all the poses? Because one thing people don't understand is that when you go up for that judging portion of it during the day, there's several poses that you have to know how to do, and it basically requires you to flex every single muscle in your body at the same time for as long as the judges feel like looking at you. And if they're comparing you against somebody else, it might take a while. If it's just you and two other guys in your class, you might be up there for a minute and a half and you're done. If it's you and 12 other dudes, you could be up there for a while. And so part of training for a competition is doing posing, which means standing in a mirror and holding poses for a minute to 2 minutes at a time, flexing every single muscle in your body as hard as you can, with a smile on your face, no less. So, but that's where the competition was for me. Could I do that? And when I decided, I don't care how I place, I don't care if I have a trophy, I don't care about any of that. I just wanted to be able to know, could I go through the diet? Could I go through the training? Could I perform that evening? And just do it. One time, there it is. So I finally went to my father, who, of course, like I said, had been a veteran at this point, and I got him to help me put together my first, bodybuilding training protocol and posing, and used that, and had a lot of help from him to get ready for it. And in 2006, I did my very first bodybuilding competition. I said I'm only going to do it once, just to say that I did it, but again, just wanted to prove to myself that I could. So I went out there. I had competed in two classes and ended up walking out with a third and fifth place trophy. Um, but placing aside, when I got off the stage after doing my posing routine that evening, I, before I had even set my foot on the floor from coming off the stage, I was already telling myself, I'm doing this again. And this was, again, not to compete with the other people, but it was like, okay, now I know I can do it. And I know what it took to get me here. Could I do it even better next time? Because now I had learned from the trials and tribulations I went through that first time around. And this is something that applies to what I do with my clients now, because I've been through some pretty severe diet situations and dealt with all of the obstacles that come along with that. Uh, I would later get into pro wrestling, which I'll talk about in future episodes. And that would require me to get into a different sort of diet and training regimen. But what all of this firsthand experience does for me, though, is it enables me to have perspective and empathy for the clients that I train right now. And it's been a very incredibly useful tool. Uh, and I think is one of the things that helps set me apart from other personal trainers. Um, I ended up doing four bodybuilding competitions after I said I was only going to do one. And then I planned on doing one more, and that's when I got into professional wrestling. Again, I'll get into that in later episodes, but I did end up becoming a pro wrestler for a company in Chicago called Resistance Pro. My pro wrestling name was Eric St. Vaughn. The company was owned by two brothers, Gabriel and Jacques Barron, and the creative director for the company, who ran the storylines and came up with characters, basically driving the narrative of the company, was none other than the lead of the Smashing Pumpkins, Mr. Billy Corgan, whom I happen to be a absolute complete fan of, my favorite band in the world. So to have pro wrestling and my favorite band come together under one roof and then get the opportunity to be a part of it was an absolute dream come true. Uh, but in that, I then had to learn how to do professional wrestling and go to school for it, which a lot of people don't realize is a thing. They say, I didn't know there was a school. It's like, yeah, you have to learn how to be a pro wrestler. You have to learn how to be a referee. You have to learn how to be a commentator, all that stuff. It's all part of the schooling. Um, but again, in the course of that, learned a lot of things that were applicable as far as how I approach training other people, and again, just being able to have empathy for the ups and downs that go along with what, you know, people go through with a personal trainer. You know, not everybody goes to a personal trainer to lose weight. So I've trained people to compete in their very first bodybuilding competitions. I've trained people to get ready for training in professional wrestling. I've gotten people to, I mean, just prepare for a marathon and help them with their golf swing. I've helped people who have had um, issues with their back, their necks, their hips. I had one person who had a very severe central nervous system disorder that I had to work with. I've worked with people with special needs, and with every one of these people in that diverse rainbow, I learn new things that cross over from one person to another, from one client to another. And it allows me then to become a stronger and better personal trainer for everybody. So, what I do now is I do in home personal training. So, I go to people's homes, offices. Some people will do online training, and I am there to get them through a workout on their time and make it as convenient for them as possible. Having that appointment keeps them accountable. I have clients who, at the end of the day, they know what to do as far as their workouts, or they might know what to do with their diet. But if they don't have that person knocking at their door and saying, okay, it's time to work out, or that person who's looking at their food log every single day and keeping them accountable, they'll go off the rails and they know it. So I'm not trying to keep people longer than they need to be. If you get to a point where you can work out on your own and you can handle your own diet, then I've done my job. If you're somebody who just needs that extra accountability, somebody who's checking in on them, somebody who's making sure that they're being progressive in all of their efforts, that's what I do. So, to kind of bring it back around to what this podcast is, all of my experiences that I've had as a person who just has enjoyed working out, has felt the benefits of it, has felt the benefits of good diet and healthy living, has tried to push myself outside of my comfort zone and deal with the uncomfortable parts of that, uh, and has learned from my clients. I've learned from the experiences that I've watched my clients go through and helping coach them through things. I've learned from their personal lives and their personal situations and how those things can affect their health and well being. There's a lot of that stuff that on my end that I think can be very beneficial for people to learn about, beyond just the basics of, like, avoid seed oils and watch out for high sodium and things like that. I mean, I can do that like everybody else, and it will be incorporated into this, but I want to broaden the scope a little bit and try to help bring my personal experience out to you. So that's what I'm looking to do with this podcast. So, with that, you can find me on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well as YouTube. Okay. Here's where it's all at. We're on Facebook, Tommy Else / personal trainer, or dash, I should say, personal trainer. YouTube at the T3 Universe. Twitter at Tommy_else. You can email me at tommyelse@gmail.com. Real easy to remember. And if you're interested in trying to do a free consultation and free workout, I always do a free consultation. We sit down, we talk about what your goals are. We try to work out a plan. I give you an idea of what I would do with you. I take that information back home. I go through it. I come up with a short-term plan to present, and then we will do a free first workout with you just so that you can get an idea of what it's like to work out with me. I'm not a drill sergeant type of guy. I'm not someone who's going to use negative reinforcement. I want you to be comfortable. For a lot of people, it's convenient for them to be able to sometimes slip this into the middle of their day. They don't have to leave their house. They can shower in their own home. They can do it in the privacy of their own place without having other people around if you're self-conscious about that. And doing this for people has been what I've done for 20 years now, and it's very rewarding, and it's really cool to see the results that people get. And I want to be able to share that with everybody in this show going forward. So, with all that said, thank you very much for tuning in to the very first episode of Tommy L's Personal Trainer. I, of course, have been your host. Who else but Tommy L's? And until next time, take care, and I'll see you soon.